So what is Redux? Redux is a library that helps you manage the state of your application, and is something that you should use in medium to large single-page applications with complex data flows. So if you're building a simple application with simple data flow, you don't necessarily need Redux. And in fact, Redux can add extra unnecessary complexity in your application. So what do I mean by these large single-page applications? Well, in a typical Angular app, without the Redux architecture, you know that each component maintains the state and the logic behind a view. This model aligns perfectly with the encapsulation principle of object-oriented programming. However, it can be a problem when you have multiple views that are working with the same piece of data and do not have a parent-child relationship. In these situations, we often have multiple copies of the same data that are independent of each other. So when a view updates a model, we need to do some extra work to keep the other views in sync. For example, think of Facebook. On Facebook, we have three views that represent the current state of users' messages. On the navigation bar, we have this icon that shows the number of new messages. And if we're on the messages page, we have a view like this. And irrespective of what page we're on, we can also have multiple chat tabs on the bottom of the screen. These are independent views that need to be in sync. And what is important here is that they do not have a parent-child relationship. So this navigation bar is not a parent or child of other views here. If it was, then passing data would be simple. It would simply use the input properties of the child components to pass the data down the subtree. But since these views are independent, if you want to keep them in sync, we have to do some extra work. A common solution is to use events. And sooner or later, that will turn into an event spaghetti. In a large code base, we have events published all over the place, and then to track what happens to the application state, we have to jump all over the code to see what's going on. The problem with this approach is that the data can be updated in an unpredictable way. When there is a bug, we have to jump all over the code to figure out how the data is flowing and how the application state is updated in multiple places. So it's unpredictable. Also, adding a new feature becomes a challenge because once again, we don't know what is the impact of this new feature on the application state. If it's touching the same piece of data that is in different places that needs to be kept in sync, again, we have to do a lot of hard work. So Facebook had this problem back in 2014, and that's why they introduced the Flux architecture. Now, Redux is a simplified and lightweight implementation of this architecture that provides a clean and elegant solution to this problem, maintaining the application state in a predictable way. So there are no surprises. Now, apart from this, Redux provides a number of other benefits. The first one is that it decouples your application from a presentation framework like Angular. So you can implement a big chunk of your application and its presentation logic using simple functions that are completely decoupled from Angular or any other presentation frameworks. And then you can decide if you want to use Angular or maybe you want to use React. So it allows you to postpone decisions about external libraries and frameworks, which is one of the attributes of clean architecture, as you might have heard from Uncle Bob. The second benefit is that it makes it easier to unit test your application without mocks, spies, and any other tricks that can make testing both complex and error-prone. Because Redux is heavily based on functional programming, so as you will see in this section, we'll be writing simple functions that take your state and return a new state. That's all. These functions are really easy to test, and this means you can write your tests before your production code, which basically means test-driven development or TDD. The third benefit is that you can get some really cool tools as part of your development. One such example is Redux Developer Tools extension that you can add to Chrome, Firefox, and other browsers. It makes it incredibly easy to debug your application by allowing you to inspect the application state in such a way that we have never seen before. This is actually one of the features that I was really impressed with, and you're going to see that in this section. And the last benefit is that Redux makes it incredibly easy to implement features like undo and redo. So if you need these functions in your application, yes, you can implement it without Redux, but using Redux makes your life much easier. Now, all these fancy benefits, of course, they come with a cost. Just like many other architectural patterns, you're going to write a bit more code and you will have more moving parts in your application. So use Redux only if you're building a medium to large single page application with complex views and data flows. Here are some scenarios. You have independent copies of the same data in multiple places. You have multiple views that need to work with the same data and be in sync. Users can collaborate and work on the same piece of data. So data can be changed by user A, and at the same time, user B can change the same data. Or data can be updated by multiple actors, so it can be changed as a result of user actions, and at the same time, it may arrive from the server, either via polling or push notifications. So if you have these scenarios in your application, you would potentially benefit from Redux. So remember, when building a new app, you don't need to automatically reach for Redux. You can always start simple, and as your application grows, then you can refactor existing components and use Redux to manage the application state in a predictable and deterministic way. Next, we're going to look at the building blocks of Redux.